Hey y'all, it's Michael. So this is going to be part 2 of books that I would recommend to my younger self. I'll leave part 1 in the description down below so you can check it out and see the concept of these videos. This is going to be part 2 of part 4, so yay, this will involve basically my teenage years. So this will be around 11 years to 20 years old. So yeah, let's get started. I'm gonna follow a very similar structure and concept in the previous video. So the one thing that I started realizing when I started making this list, especially when it came to this part, was finding the books. There have been so many great books that I read throughout the years, and literally picking out 3 books per decade essentially was really hard. Yeah, narrowing down the list was probably the most difficult part, but then also the meaning and the sentimental values was also a challenge. I think for everybody anyways, I'm just making a general consensus, is that your teenage years are basically for your discovery, finding out who you are. Like, these are the years where you feel you have more responsibilities, and so I decided, and you know more about the world, so I decided to pick books that I thought would explain that. So the first book that I would recommend is a newer one, and I think this is probably like one of the most newest one actually in this whole list in general, and that's Grasshopper Jungle by Andrew Smith. Y'all, this is probably one of my favorite books I've ever read. I mentioned that in like the books about from my book club. I think this fits right in on this list that I would recommend to my younger self. And why I would recommend this is because just the discovery and just what the book represents. This is a story about, we follow the main protagonist as basically him and his friends goof around and accidentally releases a vial of grasshopper sperm and causes these huge giant grasshoppers to basically take over the world. But it's so much more than that. What I love most about this novel is the quirkiness, the funness of it, and just the bizarreness of it. And I recommend it to my younger self because you love this type of stuff. Like, I love that type of, even to this day, this amount of imagination, just weirdness that I would have loved as a kid. Like, growing up, I would have just like fell in love with this story in general. So that's why I would recommend it to myself. It's just so bizarre and so weird that I know I would love it, so that's why I would recommend it to my younger self. All right, number 2 book on here that I chose. This one was kind of hard because I wanted to pick something from one of my favorite authors, which is Toni Morrison. But I don't know which book I would have picked because at the time, probably around this teenage years, I wanted to put it on the list in general, but at the time, at the teenage years, I felt as though some of her like more pivotal works would have been a little bit challenging even for me, not just only like thematic wise, but also just like her writing style. Like, I would never recommend my younger self jazz. Like, I don't even know what would be going on in this, or like even Beloved. I think that would be a little bit harder for me to comprehend during my teenage years. So I picked one of my favorites in her list of her bibliography, but I also think would be like pivotal for me and just learning about like a character that I would have some sort of connection with, and that's The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This story, I know growing up, so eye-opening. I think that would be the first thing for me anyways, would be eye-opening, and following Pecola and learning how she deals about, like, she feels so outside and so different, and she wants to be like these white girls with blonde hair and blue eyes, and just like she can't do it, and it won't happen, and just like all of the awful things that happened in her life. Reading this probably around like the pivotal age of like younger, around my teenagers years, probably like around 15 or 16, I felt as though it would have made just as of an impact as I did when I read it for the first time, like in my early 20s. And I just know like I would have fell in love with Morrison's, not only her characterizations, but also her writing. Like, oh my gosh, I would have fell in love with her writing. Like, this would have been like, oh my gosh, I need to seek out more of her works and see what else she has written by then. And I also wanted to include this on this list just because also I know that when I found out the news this year, it's crazy, right? This year alone of her passing, it was, I just remember, I was like, at work, and I was just like, oh my God, that's sad. And so I wanted to include it in this list, not only for remembrance, but I know that as a teenager, it would have definitely made an impact on me. All right, and the last one on here for the third book that I would recommend to my younger self is my favorite book of all time to this day. I still love it, and I know. It's a very polarizing book, but I remember when I first read this in 9th grade, and it changed me. And at the time, I didn't know it then, but looking back, I was like, wow, it really did not only change the way I read books, but also how I view characters in books. And that's The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I think the one thing that I connect personally so much with Holden in general is how he views the world in this way that adults, I think this is like very important in my teenage years, because this is probably the time when I started realizing that adults don't really know what they're talking about. And it's not like in a condescending smart sense, like, as a teenager you think you know everything. Trust me, as a teenager I thought I knew everything, but I didn't know nothing, okay? I didn't know shit. I didn't know nothing about nothing, okay? I don't really know what I'm doing, but adults don't really know what they're doing, and they're putting on this facade that they do know what they're doing, but we all know that they don't know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? And the way that he frames that aspect of like not only taking care of his sister, but seeing how things are phony, and not even just like adults in general, but like the world, and how the world portrays, especially like as a younger kid. Like also, like, I have to think about this too, like growing up, we didn't have as much technology as we do now. Like, oh my gosh, like the amount of technology that kids nowadays are so exposed to, it's much on a grander scale than I would have. Like I had one of those old flip phones growing up, and it didn't even have internet on it, which is like wild. And now it does, and I felt that I would recommend it to my younger self, because I know myself, like I really know myself, that I relate so much to Holden, and while this book is incredibly polarizing, I definitely get it. I know as a teenager that he definitely played an important part in my reading and in my life for sure. I just want to talk about 2 points to myself and how to be a better person. So the first thing I wrote on here is in the previous video I talk about like how I want you to love yourself more, Michael. I need you to do that again, like usual, okay? Oh my God, y'all, the teenage years are just rough for everyone, I swear. But the one thing I put on here that is a little bit different is I want you to be more kind. This is something I felt as though I would have really told myself during my teenage years. And that's because I felt one thing that I didn't know how to do was how to express my emotions in a safe and viable way, and more in a constructive way. And I say that because I just need you to be more kind, not only to others for sure, like definitely to others, to be nicer, please, but also to yourself. And I would tell myself that yes, you are angry, and I wish y'all I knew how to get more of my aggression and my like all of these noises right now. Oh my gosh, I am fighting the system right now as all of these noises right now as I'm filming. But I would definitely recommend myself for that, to just be more kind, be more thoughtful, and think about others. I really would tell myself that be more kind. Be more kind. And the last thing that I put on here, while these emergency vehicles, what did I tell y'all? I told y'all the emergency vehicles. The last one I hear on put is confidence. I wished that I could tell my younger self, especially during these teenage years, is to be more confident. And I know it is one of those things where it is definitely easier said than done, because when you're at this age, like you put value on what others think of you, and I would tell myself, like, stop doing that. I wish I valued myself more. I wish the way I valued myself were more important than how others view me and what I thought others views me, because during this time, I would say that I was probably more shy. Well, I would probably be less shy um, than like my when I was a child, just probably because I probably knew more of myself just a little bit. But I really wish that I had more confidence and more assurance of myself. I think during your teenage years, you're really trying to find yourself. I feel like these books that I recommend myself is like more about trying to find yourself and who you really are in this world. And I think I would recommend myself and tell myself that more. Oh man, the teenage years, y'all. Oh, bruh. Oh my god. One thing before I go. Start your skincare routine now. Oh my gosh. I wish someone during these years would be like, okay, you need to start knowing your toner, your moisturizer, like every. I wish. Oh my gosh. I wish I started my skincare routine, and I wish I knew what I knew now, because otherwise. Oh my god, and also like I had like braces and glasses and everything, but I wish I told myself, oh my god, please start your skincare routine now. Like start them young, y'all. Like tell your kids how to do your skincare routine. Oh my gosh, do it. Like I just wish I told myself that, because what I knew now, my face would have looked so much, I wouldn't have broken up. And those are the books I would recommend during my teenage years, 11 to 20. So yes, I'll see you tomorrow in the next part of the videos. Bye. And look, this time I didn't get too much emotional. I didn't get too emotional. Michael, too emotional.